How is everybody doing? Strength Chat episode 129, and today I have got a very special guest for you. Today I'm joined by a former CrossFit athlete, now weightlifter, winning the 2019 Pan American Championships. Today I'm joined by the one and only Alyssa Ritchey. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to be here and to talk with you about everything.
No worries at all. Thanks for taking the time to jump on. I know obviously we had a little bit of a chat before we started recording, but how's everything sort of going in your world? What's been happening at your end with everything going on in terms of training, coaching, and all that sort of stuff?
I'm kind of the unique exception of an athlete. I usually train outside in my garage. That is at my home, which I'm in right now. And like I said, my situation is unique because, Max, my coach, is in California and I am in Ohio. So for 3.5 years, I've been coached remotely by Max Ada from Juggernaut Strength Training. Did I say that right? Juggernaut Training? Yeah, Systems. Oh my gosh, Juggernaut Training Systems. How did I get that wrong? I've been with them for like 6 years now. Anyways, I've been.
Okay.
Don't let Max or Chad listen to this. They'd be like, "Oh, typical Alyssa." But no, I've been training with Max for 3.5 years, and it's been nothing but the best. And that training kind of looks like I send him a text, my video for that day of my snatch or my clean and jerk or whatever exercise I'm doing. He critiques it. He's pretty darn great at getting back to me promptly, like right within that like second I text him. And he'll send his feedback back and his coaching cues and what he thinks I need to do better. And then we kind of work together my whole training session, which could last anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, depending on what I'm doing. Sometimes that can be tough though, because I will like add an extra snatch reps that's not on the programming because I'm like, I want to get this right. I tend to be a perfectionist sometimes, which is not the best thing when you're an athlete. It can be and it can't be. It can be a destroyer or it can be something that can help you. I think there's just a balance. If you're a perfectionist, you need to understand that it's literally never going to be perfect. But if you're a perfectionist as an athlete, you can always work towards that goal, and that will make you become a better athlete.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it. So Max and I, this is kind of normal, this whole quarantine life for me, because being an athlete, your training comes first, your recovery comes first, and you don't get to go out with friends and do crazy things. It can tend to be a very boring process, and people don't see that versus the excitement of it all, because they're like, oh, she's training constantly and she gets to do that. And it's so cool. And it's like, it is, but it's very draining because you have to always be your own motivator and own encourager, especially when you train alone like me in a gym.
Yeah. And because obviously with touching on, obviously an athlete yourself with the Olympics being changed and the competitions, the question that I like to ask, because I know competing in powerlifting myself, the British Championships have been cancelled this year. So to keep yourself motivated, is there any competition on the horizon? Are you going to try and push some of the weights that you're doing to sort of keep that motivation up? How's that looking sort of at your end?
Sure. So a lot of it got canceled, like you said, 2021 Olympics now. Who knows if they'll even hold it, especially with COVID spiking again here in the United States. It's like already increasing the case number since, but who knows, because they don't ever tell us the truth. So it's really hard to know what really is going on versus what's not going on. So with that being said, the competition and the meets got pushed back until like October. One meet got pushed back that I was supposed to compete in I think it was March. I was supposed to compete in like the this Colombian silver meet in March. And then the Pan Ams were supposed to be in April, and then the Olympics were supposed to be in July. Now that's all pushed back to like October and October and April 2021. And then the Olympics was pushed back to July 21. So the training has been, I mean, I don't need motivated to get into the gym.
Yeah.
Because that's just instilled in me. I just love it. I have no need for somebody saying like, I don't need to watch videos and be like, oh, that's motivating. I'm going to go out to the gym to do that. I'm just like, I go out to the gym and do it because I love it and I have a passion for it. And I like to work hard. That's just in my character. It's just a part of me. I've always liked to work hard growing up in athletics, and whatever I do, I always put 100% passion and ambition and a go-getter attitude towards it. I don't mind working hard because I know what working hard gets you. And I also don't mind working hard because I actually sometimes I love the training more than the competition. Like the ability to see my body push and to be as capable as it has 3.5 years with strength training has been unreal to me. Yeah. So motivation wise, I don't really need it, but it is nice to train with people sometimes, because sometimes you do kind of get worn out, and those people kind of add a little extra pizzazz and a little extra passion to what you're doing, because they, you talk and joke around, but it has to be the right person too, because people can be energy suckers. And if you're around people that are energy suckers, you can tend to have a worse training day, or they want your advice while you're training. And it's like, now's not the time.
Yeah, it's a good point that I've had being lucky enough to have quite a good few training partners, and I completely get where you're coming from. That sometimes you just walk into the gym and you're just bouncing off each other. My actual on my personal Facebook page, there's a photograph, and I'm spotting. I think at the time he was competing. He competing in the 66 kilo class. So I compete in the 120 class.
Oh wow!
The squat rack height was very different, but it's just a really good photograph, and we're both turning around, and he was the one that was squatting, but I was just as motivated for him to squat. So yeah, I completely get with sessions like that. But when you mentioned about being a little bit of a perfectionist, have you found this time quite good to actually focus on that element of training a little bit and be able to dial things in a little bit more?
So my situation is very unique, and I'm happy that you asked that question, because I feel like I should kind of talk about it. I haven't really wanted to talk about it a lot because I wanted to be able to not think out of emotion and not respond out of emotion, versus have a logical explanation for what happened and how my journey kind of flipped upside down within a couple months. I'm not sure if you know Jordan De La Cruz. She's the 55 kilo weightlifter for Team USA. She decided at last minute, when Max and I were in Peru, we found out that right before I had said, I'm not going to cut this weight because it's hard. It's not worth it right now. I can do the American Open finals to get my spot on the Pan Am team. Well, we had no idea Jordan was cutting weight. Well, Piros Dimas, by accident, let it slip out. And he's like, well, Jordan's going to this meet and cutting to 49. And Max and I were like, what? And so that kind of hit us like a brick wall. And it was a very emotional time, and I was very sour about it. But then I also was like, well, she hasn't competed yet. She doesn't know how the weight cut feels, and all that. Those factors definitely lead into it. I'll tell you one thing though, the first 3 weight cuts, they're fine. They're easy. I mean, they're not easy, but they're easy to push through because it's worth it. And it's whatever. But after you get like me to number 16 or number 5 even, or 6, it starts getting very difficult on your mind. And so I was like, well, that's okay. She didn't have that many weight cuts. She literally only had 6 months left to the Olympics. Not even. She had, when Peru was in November, and then she competed in November in this I don't remember exactly where it was. It was not Iran or Iraq. It was somewhere like over that in that region though. I can't exactly remember, but anyways, she competed there and she ended up putting up this pretty decent, a decent total, 184, I believe it was. So I was like, okay, whatever. I can beat that. I've hit 190 before. So we go to the American Open finals and she does really well. Same total, 184. So does Morgan King. And I ended up cutting weight first in September and cutting weight for Peru, and then cutting weight and turning around in 5 weeks and cutting weight for American Open finals. So I had literally 3 weight cuts within a 3 month period. So it was really hard. And that's 4 weight cuts for the year too, because I did one for Pan Am's. And after traveling to Peru and actually not needing it, knowing that Jordan's going to compete anyway again at the American Open finals, we were like really bummed that we wasted our time in Peru. And also we're not told this was going to happen, because being teammates on Team USA, you would think that the coaches would have had the audacity to tell me, because I have I have ruined my body for the past 3.5 years to get this Olympic spot, and to have no one tell me what's going to kind of happen in the long run, or kind of happen at the last minute. All they would have had to tell me is, listen, this weight cut's not worth your time. Just go to American Open finals and compete. Jordan's going to be competing in the 49 class. That would have been great. But they didn't do that. And they think whatever, it's fair, it's okay. But in my eyes, it wasn't fair, and it was very heartbreaking and it felt hurtful. I didn't feel like I was part of the team.
Yeah.
So with that, all of that crazy chaos, this has kind of been my last 6 months of the Olympic year. I think you can hear my dog snoring. I'll wake him up if he keeps doing it. But anyways, so I went in after the American Open finals. I ended up not being able to put up the total I needed. Ended up hitting a really baller clean though, twice 106, which for me, that was just, honestly, that was the coolest performance I felt myself.
Yeah.
Because it really showed the kind of heart that I have as an athlete. It really shown the audience I am a girl that just won't give up and just won't let it happen. I will put my everything and anything into trying to make it happen, regardless if I've never even put that number up twice in a competition ever. So Jordan and Morgan advanced to the next spot, and they were able to pick their next competitions first, which for me, that's not good, because I have to have a competition in that next quarter. And I didn't have the last gold competition that I needed, which was Pan Am's, because Jordan and Morgan were in that spot. Another thing is, even though I was the top ranked 49 still, and Morgan was third, I was still not able to sign up for any competitions, which makes no sense. Because Roby wise, which are the points you accumulate to get for the Olympics, they're basically let's just call them points, because Roby just is stupid. You basically, in weightlifting, it's a weight class fight. It has nothing to do with really who's the best, because there are girls that are going in the 87 class and then the 76 class that probably won't be competitive in those classes. But then there's smaller girls like me, Jordan, Maddie Sasser, that could be really competitive. But because our weight class is so extremely hard and filled up with women, 30 or 20 or whatever, we can't get high in the international rankings, because China's in our class, and Russians, and just anybody good is in our class. So this is so confusing. Sorry, this is such a long drawn out answer to your question.
No. When you mentioned there about the points, I've spoken to Sarah Davies and Emily Campbell, obviously the British lifters, speaking about the qualification for the Olympics, and it's crazy. I've never had, and I've always asked, and I'm always interested in it, because it seems, so many loopholes to go through to qualify for the Olympics.
Yeah, and then when you do think you're going to qualify, all of a sudden you're like me, you're like flat on your back, like what the frick just happened? I just got like somebody just cut down on my weight class at the last minute, and now I can't do anything about it. So now you're like stuck in this like rut. Like, what do I do next? Well, you can't do anything because I'm not eligible to sign up for these meets. Jordan and Morgan have the first pick. So I somehow I built up all these points, and since I'm still the first 49 in the country, second now behind Jordan, because after she went to Rome in January and put up a huge total, which she did great. Don't get me wrong. Am I sour about it? Absolutely yes. And I think if you don't understand why I'm sour about it, like people listening, then you have no idea what I went through to get to this point in my like entire Olympic journey. Yeah. So, but another thing is I started like 3.5 years ago, and these girls have been training for 6-10 years. So to look at it in that way, I did absolutely amazing. I got to the best position I could have ever gotten to. I could have never thanked myself for getting me this far. And Max, of course, Max and everybody, all my sponsors, all the team behind me that like helped me get to this area. Absolutely. So right now, basically what I'm doing is I am technically still second in the running for the 49s for the Olympics position. Is it possible for me to get to beat Jordan? Unless she gets hurt, it's really not possible. So I took my training in a different direction. And what I've been doing is I have been lifting still. I have not yet decided if I want to continue the 2021 process, and I have not made a clear answer. I think I'm finally coming to light this past probably 2 weeks on knowing, like, should I continue or should I not? I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis back in February, and I started medication for that. It's basically an autoimmune disease of the thyroid. Your body thinks your thyroid is something bad, so your antibodies are just attacking it. Yeah. And that was what was happening to me, and that's a lot of the reason why I couldn't make weight. I was exhausted all the time in training. I don't know how I even did the Olympic process with Hashimoto's thyroiditis without pills, because dude, I tell you what, I'm training now and I feel great. I feel on top of the world. If I would have felt like this training for the Olympics, I believe the world's performance would not have been the way it went, because it did not go well. My weight cut was extremely hard, ended up taking double the amount of time it should have. And I also think I would have been able to cut probably for Peru better. I just think a lot of things would have been different, especially the last 6 months, because I think what ended up happening the past 6 months is so much stress from the weight cuts brought on the Hashimoto's really bad. And I just started breaking down. I couldn't hold on anymore. And so my body just completely let go. And that's kind of, I think, what happened. But just to let people know also that Hashimoto's is not caused from the weight cut. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease that you have in your body, but what spikes it to come to surface is things like repeated stress, or just like, it's mostly just stress. So.
Yeah, when you're saying there, and I remember you put something you put something up about it, and to see the progress that you've made, and from a person that's interested in strength sports, you want to see sort of the best lifters go and lift at these events, and sometimes I think it's a shame that actually things to do with lifting or not being able to, or other people not just mentioning things and giving people the right direction can affect things. But yeah, when you're saying, that training's going well now, and after all that stress, that training's going really well now is really good to hear. And hopefully, that we've as things start easing with COVID and everything like that, that competitions will come up and there'll be a little bit more direction with things. Because obviously, having compared to other people that have trained for, you mentioned there maybe 10 or more years, and the couple of years that you've been weightlifting, just touching on sort of your background as well in your training. So you mentioned that athletics as well. Do you just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself in terms of how you've progressed through your training and how everything has sort of come together?
Yeah. So do you want me to kind of start like what I did when I was a little girl to what I do now? Or would you rather just like have like the past, like what kind of
it's up to you. What do you think? I mean, I find it interesting because I always mention when I've spoken about it, that myself getting involved in powerlifting. I really got involved in powerlifting because I stopped playing rugby as much and I still wanted something competitive. And I find it interesting that because especially from my client's point of view, and when I've spoken about different lifters and coaches that I've spoken with, it seems as though that all they've ever done is weightlifting, all they've ever done is powerlifting. Whereas actually, what I find quite interesting is, I'm quite surprised about how many lifters, if you like, have actually come from quite varying backgrounds and have swapped and changed, and then I've actually got to the point where they've settled on weightlifting or powerlifting or whatever it may be.
Okay. Yeah. So I kind of started, I've been an athlete kind of my whole life. So I'll just like go through it really fast because it can get long. Cause like I said, I'm a talker. I'm so sorry, but maybe it's a good thing because we're on a podcast.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I did gymnastics from age like 9 to age 11 and a half to 12. I ended up quitting that because my coach was crazy. She actually has a safe sport violation right now after many years of girls dealing with her, which is crazy. So then after gymnastics, I decided to run track and field in junior high. I excelled at that. I ended up doing really well, setting like all the school records for junior high and like doing super well. And I was a hurdler. Okay. Yep. And people are like, what? Because I stand about 4'10" and a half and I'm about 100 and I can say in kilos, I'm probably around like 54 kilo. Probably then I was, gosh, I probably weighed like a whole 95 pounds back then. So after junior high, I started volleyball and did that, dabbled with that. I was the back row player, the libero, they call it now. And it's a person that like controls the back court. Usually you're real scrappy and real fast and like powerful because you can move. You have really good agility. And after volleyball or during volleyball, I also like did track and field all the way from 9th grade to 12th. And to get better at track and field in high school and to get faster hurdle times and longer long jumps and do better on the relay, my coach saw a lot of potential. So he said, why don't we get you into a gym that my son goes to and you could personal train with the trainer there? And I was like, sure. So I went in and started training, and about a week in, the trainer just noticed talent that, I mean, I just knew I just love sports. That's what I did. I just love sports. It was like I was 15 years old at the time. It's not like I was like, oh, I'm a goddess, I can do really well in sports. I just loved it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important part as a child. I think if you don't love what you're doing, and as an adult, then you're probably not doing the right thing.
100%.
You'd be doing something different. Yeah. So I always had that love for athletics. And I went to this gym and he was like, 1 week after I was there, he's, Alyssa, come here. And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to try the sport of weightlifting? And I was like, no, boys do that. And I was like, I don't want to get big and bulky like boys. And he's like, you're not going to get big and bulky like boys. Girls you could still stay lean and tiny. But he's like, you're really confident and you know what you're doing and you're a hard worker. I see a lot of potential. So I agreed, I did it, and I did really well. I won every competition. I set records. I advanced to nationals, but unfortunately my parents didn't have the money to help me get there. And I don't think my parents knew that like I kind of wanted to go. I just I never asked my parents for things.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of money growing up. So I didn't want to put my parents in that like pressure of situation to like pay for something that wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
It was just for fun versus like food on the table is necessary.
And I suppose as
So,
well, sorry, just touching on
no,
that,
go ahead.
where have the do the nationals change every year in America? Because obviously, why you mentioned that is the last couple of years I've competed at the British. They've been right on the south coast, so like near Dover. I think last year it was in Dover, and it took me 7 hours to drive there. Because I got stuck near London driving from north. But I suppose in the grand scheme of things, the size of America compared to the UK, are they always sort of in a similar place, or can they be dotted around sort of all over?
Dotted around all over
Yeah.
because it just constantly changes the venue. I don't know, but I don't recall exactly where it was. I want to say it's like in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I'm not 100% exactly where it was. All I knew is that I had to buy a plane ticket and I had to stay in a hotel, so that was going to be a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we just didn't have that money. And like I said, I didn't want to put my parents in that position to pressure them to. I mean, I had done gymnastics, and gymnastics was like $5,000 a year.
Wow.
And that was back then. So think about it, what it would cost now to put your daughter through gymnastics or your son, with the cost of Leo's, the coaches' fees, the practices, then you have the camps and you have the travel and you have the hotel, you have the gas. So it's like, it costs a lot for my parents to invest in me as a little girl. I wasn't ready for them to invest in me as a track and field athlete, a weightlifting athlete, and volleyball. It was a lot.
Yeah.
So, yep. So basically that training went really well, and it actually did. I ended up making it to state in the 100-meter hurdles, the 300-meter hurdles, and the long jump. I ended up making my best times ever. I set like all the school records. I ended up getting MVP at a big invitational meet, which is like all the schools come together from all different regions and you compete, and end up getting the MVP at that one, which was really cool and very, very honorable.
Yeah.
And then I ended up qualifying for the 100-meter hurdles, which was my biggest goal, because I wanted to show people that size doesn't matter. So I was like always in that mindset that like everybody always categorized me in this like small woman's body, and that I was incapable of reaching certain goals because of my height. Yeah. And I always thought to myself, like, how do you even think like that? Like I couldn't ration the why behind people's thoughts and rationalities that like, oh, this is how we think. Yeah. We think you're incapable because you're too small. I never understood that. So I never let that be a hurdle in my life. It was never an obstacle. And if people challenge me to an idea that they have or a thought that they have, and it's like negative towards me, I'm always going to work to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I worked to prove them wrong. I was the smallest girl at state in the 100-meter hurdle race by like 7 inches.
Wow.
So yeah, and it was really cool because like the one girl was like, let's see, my hand's out of the screen, but she was like this tall, and then the next girl, and the next girl, the next girl, next girl, and I'm like, and everybody was like, literally, like, I had so many people come up to me after I ran the race, and they were like, you know, I didn't have the best final race. I ended up hitting one of my legs on the hurdles, so it slowed actually it was on the first hurdle out of the gate. And what happens is you just mess your steps up after that, and you just can't regain your composure and you can't regain your speed. So I ended up not having like the best final race, but to be in that race itself was it was perfect. It was the one thing I could have. I mean, that was my goal. That was it. I did it. I reached it, and I didn't do great in the final race, but heck, I tried. And the journey getting there was amazing.
Yeah. touching on because I quite like the whole mindset type of thing and trying to prove people wrong because um, I obviously mentioned that I originally started off playing rugby, and the team that I
Sure.
played for, the men's team, who was so my coach. When he played, Whitby were actually quite in a high league, and they were quite a big, successful team. And then through one reason or another, they started sort of falling down the leagues through players leaving, and it's only an amateur club. And the team that I played in, because the men's team had sort of had a fall from grace, if you like, were always sort of looked on as we were not a very good club, that that we shouldn't really be playing these bigger teams and going to these bigger grounds. So I am quite a big believer in sort of proving that you should be there and taking on sort of the one of my best memories is going to so there's quite a few teams down the Yorkshire coast, and we went to go play Driffield, which is, they've got quite a lot of money, they've got a really big clubhouse, and for quite a lot of years they didn't accept a fixture with us. They didn't want us to. They basically didn't want to play us. Anyway, we finally got to a point where we'd beaten quite a couple of other teams, and we're trying to make a little bit of a stir. And they said they wouldn't come to our ground, so we went to their ground and beat them.
Awesome.
And one of those things that that. And touching on sort of the weightlifting, powerlifting type of things, when people say that they don't feel as though they're strong enough going to a competition or anything like that, I think having that mindset of no, you've earned that place to go on that platform or to go and play these teams. And the thing that I wanted to talk about with like goal setting and going towards that, what are your thoughts on finding people's do you think people have to find their why when it comes to achieving their goals, or is it just finding what motivates them? And then once you've got that goal, like what you mentioned about right, you've got to that final, and then what the next steps after that? Because I know sometimes people can be really motivated and know their why for their first goal, but then it's a little bit like post-comp blues. How do you go after that? What are your thoughts on that in terms of goal setting?
Sure. Yeah. So sometimes I do think people need to know why they're doing it, because in the first place, if you're a full-time working person and you want to make, let's say, the Olympic team for or the CrossFit Games for CrossFit, or fitness now, I think we're calling it, you have to know that you're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices to get and reach that goal. And to know your why is to understand that there's going to be a lot of time commitment. There's going to be a lot of sacrifices made and choices made because you're choosing to go after this goal. You're not going to be able to go out with friends a lot often and all that extra stuff. So your why behind it needs to be realistic and obtainable, because a full-time working person is not going to be able to go to the Olympics. Or if you're older, like let's say you're like 35 years old and you're like, I'm going to try out for the next Olympics. Well, you got to like set your goals smaller and start smaller and get bigger, because small wins are bigger wins, if that makes sense. Because small realistic wins are like what needs to help build your dream bigger. Because when you think in long terms of like, I'm going to make it to the Olympics, because if I would have had that mindset going into weightlifting and competing against these girls that had 6-10 years of weightlifting behind their name, and I said, hey, my name is Alyssa Ritchey, I just started weightlifting yesterday, I want to go to the Olympics. Not really realistic, because number one, I haven't ever competed. I have never made the weight cut. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I do have big goals, because I do remember saying like, oh, I can beat Morgan King's total as a 48. And that's okay. But when it doesn't happen, or if it does happen, I mean, that's great, because you set a goal and you tried to obtain it and you did it. And if you don't, that's okay too. It's not like the world. It's just something you wanted to try to reach and you just didn't obtain it. So anyway, so what I do is I think first is, am I having fun? Because that's a huge part of like why I have been so successful in athletics. I have always had the love for them. And if I lose the love for them, I actually end up quitting them on purpose because I know that my heart's not genuinely in it anymore. So my number one thing is do they know their why? Yes, I think that's important. But I think the number one factor for people should be, are you having fun in it?
Yeah.
And is it something that makes you smile every day, or is it something that is forced? Are you going in the gym and being like, oh, I have to do it because, oh, I feel awful today. And they're always constantly complaining about being in the gym, or they're just like, I have to be motivated. Like, there's a certain amount of motivation you can get from other people. And then there's a certain amount you have to take responsibility for yourself to be in the gym and to put the work in. So I think at the end of the day, does it make you happy and are you having fun is probably the biggest and most important factor, because that will help you succeed in the long term, because then you'll know why you started. You're like, oh, I started because I want to have fun. So if you get too serious about it down the road, then you're like, back up, like back off and realize that the reason why you started this was just for fun. So making the Olympic team is cool, is extra, versus just like winning national titles and making international teams is like really awesome, like for me. So I guess, does that kind of answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned about the fun side of things, because I've always said to people that, you know, if I'm not going to enjoy something, and you know that's why, you know, being a coach myself, I've always said to people that if I stop enjoying it, I said, you'll know that I won't be there 10 minutes before the session getting everything sorted and enjoying it. You know, I've actually found myself getting, the more people I've had going to competitions, getting more excited for people competing than sometimes, you know, competing myself. But, you know, I think sometimes that when you said, you know, if you start taking things too serious, and you're taking a little bit of a step back, people start doing things because they enjoy it. I started playing rugby because I enjoyed it. It was fun. I started playing. I started doing powerlifting because originally, you know, at Christmas, the world's strongest man is shown over here on TV. So to see, you know, guys lifting loads of weight, I was like, that'd be cool. Wouldn't it be cool to lift?
Yes.
I'm still yet to do a strongman competition, but you know, when I'm lifting weights, and it's like, oh, actually, that's pretty cool. It is fun doing that. And do you think that because it does happen, I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that they're doing things because it's fun. Do you think actually, because there is that, you sort of mentioned motivation, and do you think, because there's that saying that motivation will last so long and then it becomes discipline,
Yes.
you know, being consistent. What are your thoughts on, do you think sometimes you can become too disciplined and sort of lose sight of the fact and still have that element of fun? Or, you know, how much would you push sort of the discipline side of things? But what are your thoughts on that?
I push the discipline very, very, very hard in every sport I do, to the point where I do end up being like, I just can't do this anymore. It's just too hard. And it's just too much. And it's that I'm not actually enjoying it anymore. And it takes the fun out of the process. And I did that with weightlifting. What I ended up doing is, with all the weight cuts, when I first started the sport, I was a 48, and then they changed the weight classes, and I'm a 49. I ended up cutting weight like 17, 18 times in 3.5 years. That's a lot. That's way too many. You should be cutting weight maybe twice a year, if that. But with the Olympic process and competing every 2.5 months, 6 times, you can't really do much about it. You just kind of go for it. So with discipline, I had to be very disciplined with my eating, and I had to be very disciplined with my weight cuts, because I normally sit at, like, in training, I would sit at like 54.5 kilo. And then I would have to cut in 7 weeks, because I'd usually start my weight cut 7 weeks out. And it would just be muscle mass, like muscle mass upon muscle mass. Like, it was not fat. I would say I was a very lean athlete for when I was training for competition. And 7 weeks out, I'd start cutting. And the discipline the last 7 weeks was probably the hardest bit of the process, because I I was just angry, and it didn't help that I had the thyroid dysfunction and the autoimmune disease, because time and time again, I'm going to say it again. If I would have known that was there, it would have been a totally different process. It would have been a totally different Alyssa. I would have known why I was struggling so hard to lose some of the body weight. And the weight cuts were so rough sometimes. But with the discipline process, I think I'm a very disciplined person in life and in sports. So it doesn't necessarily always take out all the fun, but when you become too overly, anything done in obsession can be a bad thing, right? Or like if you eat too much of something, it's just portion control at the end of the day. Like, step back and realize that you don't need that much of that thing. And then you can have some ice cream, but just don't have the whole pint of the ice cream. Okay. You can be in the sport of weightlifting, but you don't need to obsess about it every moment of your day. It doesn't need to be the focus of your entire day. You can have friends and you can have other things in life. When you're working towards the Olympics, it's just not like that. It's a very unbalanced, it's unbalanced, and you don't have the things you would have if you're just an international level lifter or a national level lifter versus I'm trying to be an Olympian, because being an Olympian is it's just such a different, like, it's a different life. And you become so disciplined that your relationship can suffer. I think my relationship did start suffering a lot of it, because we're going to come back to it, the Hashimoto's. I was very upset and angry a lot because my training was wearing me out. Yeah. And then having to stay small for the body weight category was killing me. Just a lot of factors, but I don't know. I think it's like how much you want to put into it too, because you should be disciplined with everything you do. Yeah. Because if you're disciplined, you can get a lot more done. But if you also have balance in your life, you can have a lot more fun. So yeah. I think there's just too many like factors that in different situations, like discipline is a great thing, but too much discipline can be a bad thing.
Yeah, I think everything that you said there, I thought that was quite a good explanation, because I know sometimes I've had clients before that are just sort of starting out, and they want to put all these I want to say
eggs in a basket.
Yeah. Just put everything in and be like, right, I'm a power lifter, I'm a weightlifter now, and then everything else. And I'm really glad you said that. They forget about everything else that goes on in the world. And it's not, obviously, with yourself at the top level of weightlifting, there's going to be scenarios where right, this is everything that you're focusing on. Whereas for lifters at a lower level, and it's been quite apparent with the whole COVID thing on the minute. If people haven't had garage gyms or something like that, and haven't touched the barbell, like myself, I've got a couple of kettlebells and a strongman log. And it's, there's other things that you can work on. So, I've worked on my mobility a little bit more, actually, because in March I was building up to a competition that I need to qualify for the British. Actually, instead of trying to eat and fill the weight class, actually, it's quite nice to be, do you know what? I can do a little bit of fitness. I don't have to absolutely have myself, which I think sometimes people lose sight of. And, there are times where, I like the analogy that you use of finding that balance, that it might shift too far one side, if you've got competition coming up or something like that, but it is still okay to shift to the other side and think about the other things, which I think people it's kind of that all or nothing mentality, and I think sometimes people forget what their current sort of situation is, if you like. Just sort of touching on, because obviously having competed in CrossFit yourself and weightlifting, how have you found the difference in competition on competition days? Because I know, obviously, weightlifting, 2 lifts, that's what you're going to get your total. Whereas CrossFit, you know, I mean, I'm not sure how early in advance that they tell you what you're going to do, but quite a lot different things, and you know, a competition over quite a long period compared to, you know, lifting on one day potentially, just for the 2 lifts. So how have you found the difference in competition?
Yeah, so it's actually a great question, because I feel like when a CrossFitter goes to a weightlifting competition, they're like, what? I'm out here alone on stage. There's no music. There's no loud crowd. It's very different. So when I was a CrossFitter, we would usually, so let's just like put it into like the regional, let's like picture me going to regionals here. So you would get your workouts probably depending on which region you're in. So we were usually, the Central East was usually the last region, the first, like, I want to say year, and then the third year, something like that. So we would know our workouts 5 weeks in advance, and we would kind of get to practice them and kind of see how we do in them. So that's all you would do for the last like 5 weeks. You would literally just do those workouts and practice them as much as possible to try to see what your times are, where you can speed up, where you can slow down, how much reps you should be doing. Should you be dropping off the bar, or should you be just holding on to the bar? And then the first week of regionals would go, like the South region would go, and people would be like, all the regions would be like, okay, cool. We're going to try to beat these times, and we're going to try to do better. And they watch their strategy, and then they take those people's strategy, use them, or they're like, oh, well, I was doing it way faster than that, so I guess maybe I could just clean it up in some other areas. Then you would get to competition, and you would have loud crowds. The crowds in CrossFit are bomb. They're just lit, like all the time. They think you're the greatest thing. You're like a celebrity. You aren't a celebrity. It's pretty cool. They're just it's just a very good community with CrossFit. They're very obsessed with just your hard work and your abilities to do the skills you perform in training and in competition. So I think the aspect of CrossFit crowds are just unreal. They just don't compare to any other crowd I've been around as a competitor.
Yeah.
And the competition floor is just different. You're with all these girls, and so you race the whole time. So you always have someone hot on your tail, or someone's ahead of you. So you always have this idea to either you push harder or you pull back because you're, fatiguing too fast, or all this stuff. And then another thing I think is really important in CrossFit versus weightlifting is you have multiple events over the entire weekend to catch back up to get on podium to make the CrossFit Games. Or you have workouts that are like your strong suits, or you have weak points and strong workouts. And like I said, you can always try to catch up at the end of the weekend. Whereas also you just don't feel alone out there, and you feel like you have all the girls' support, and the competitors are really awesome in CrossFit as well. Very, very community within the competitive region. So when you look at weightlifting, it's different. I should compare the back rooms too. CrossFit back room compared to weightlifting back room is completely different as well. Like in CrossFit, it depends on like how close the events are. Sometimes, like I remember my last region in 2014 regionals, I went out there for like, let's just say event 5. And then 30 minutes later, we had to turn around and do event 6. And we were dead, all of us. We were like, do we even warm up? So like half of us girls warmed up for like 5 minutes, and we were like, done. Let's just go out there and do the event. So we went out and did the event, and we were so tired from the 5th event, because it was like 30 minutes ago, that we were just toast. With weightlifting, it's very different. You go in the back room, and for me, it's like I listen to Max the entire time, my coach. He counts for me, and and I usually have a person that loads the bar. Okay. In CrossFit, I didn't have that. Nobody helped me out really. I had a coach my last 2 years that helped me out, but my first 2 years, it was just like me alone in the back, just kind of like doing my own thing. And in weightlifting, I had a coach that was basically doing all my thinking for me. I didn't do any thinking. I literally just sat down, and when he told me to lift, I lifted. So the back room's just different. The competitors, they don't really talk to you. You don't want to walk in front of them when they're lifting, versus in CrossFit, everyone's like chatty Cathy. I don't know how it is now, because it's a little more it's a little more advanced now with CrossFit, but I do believe they still like all chat in the back room and have fun. Whereas us weightlifters, I don't even think the girls look at me. Like, I know when I'm at like Worlds, I'm like the like Chinese girls are sitting there, the Thai girls, you'll have the Colombian girls. Like, it's rare anybody smiles at anyone. And I'm over here like, hey, what's up? Smiling, talking, chatting, laughing, having fun. And everyone's like,
Yeah.
like bright-eyed, like watching the bar and like super intense. But that's how I stay relaxed. I stay relaxed by joking and having a bunch of fun. And like I said before, if I'm not having fun, I am not doing it right.
Yeah.
So it's very quiet. You're alone on the stage in weightlifting. You walk up, you have 3 attempts at a snatch, and you have 3 attempts at a clean and jerk. And if you don't make your first attempt, it can be very scary to go back out there for your second attempt, because if you don't make a total, which means you bomb 1 lift, which means you make absolutely none of your 3 snatches or none of your 3 clean and jerks, that can be very like scary, because you put all this training, you put hundreds and hundreds of hours a year into 6 minutes of training for 6 lifts. Not like CrossFit, where you put all this training into not knowing what the heck you're going to be even be on that stage for. Like, CrossFit's so unknown. So you don't know what you're training for. You could train for everything and then train for it all wrong, you know? Yeah. And then in weightlifting, at least you 100% know what you're training for. So the question of what am I training for is taken out in weightlifting. And as in CrossFit, it's like, what am I training for? I could work on rowing all year, be really good at it, go to the meet. There's no rowing.
It is interesting. You're saying the comparison between the two, because there are team events in CrossFit, and especially walking out onto the platform on weightlifting. You don't have a little bit like I've mentioned before, like rugby, where you can rely on your teammates a little bit. And it is interesting about the backroom side of things, because I remember last year competing at the British, and Tony Cliff, who won the IPF Worlds, is still warming up in the same room, and I'm kind of like, oh my God, I've just watched him win out. And you kind of when you're walking around and you think, oh, do I smile or nod or not do anything? It is completely different. And having just as a spectator scene, I know the crowds in weightlifting and powerlifting can get G'd up and it start motivating, but having been a spectator and seeing only a handful of CrossFit competitions, it's sort of mental all the time. And just when you've compared the both, have you found transferring into weightlifting it may be a little bit of a slower pace compared to CrossFit, or how have you found sort of the from a competing side of things, and only doing two lifts compared to the variety in CrossFit, or do you still add in those other things that you might do in CrossFit?
So I specifically, are you talking about like my training specifically for CrossFit versus weightlifting? So CrossFit, I just trained, everything. My coach, my first 2 years, I did all my own stuff. And then my second 2 years, I competed in regionals. I had a coach. And compared to weightlifting, I feel like the load and the intensity and the amount of volume you get is equal in both sports. I think they're both very, very hard. In weightlifting, we're training more at like 75% and higher, versus in CrossFit, you're like training like 60 to 65. You're getting less strength work because you have to focus on gymnastics, cardio, vascular, You have to focus on like odd object stuff. You have to focus on just so much stuff. You don't get that specificity. And in weightlifting, it was like snatch, clean and jerk, back squat, front squat, pulls, accessory. And so your training is very like, it's very monotonous. It's very just repetitive. Like you train snatch on Monday with front squats, with accessory, with some snatch pulls. Tuesday, we're lightening it up. We're going to do some power cleans. We're going to do some heavy pulls, and you're going to do accessory. On Wednesday, you're going to do squats and snatch and cleans and blah, blah, blah. I liked it though. Because my body got super strong and like super ridiculously, like just so strong. And so it was really cool to see the progression from CrossFit to weightlifting. The same amount, I'm training the same amount of hours I would as a CrossFitter. I think I was smarter in the sport of weightlifting because I trained smarter and my diet was way cleaner, and I actually ate like a good amount of macros. Okay, let's back that up. Yes, I was weight cutting. And yes, I was like dieting majority of the time in weightlifting, but I did learn how to eat better foods as a weightlifter. In CrossFit, I don't think I was eating enough. Eating maybe like 50 grams of protein for a 105-pound body. So we're talking like nowhere even near enough protein. And then it just, as I did weightlifting, I just learned how to eat, and I learned how to eat better. I actually do want to talk about this. I've never had an eating disorder as a female. The only eating disorder I've ever had is eating way too much. I love food. I just freaking love it. I will eat and eat and eat, and I will not like have any, I won't ever have a six pack because I like to eat too much food. And like going over my macros now versus when I was like a full-time competitive weightlifter, going over my macros now doesn't really bother me. But when I was competitive and had to stay in a certain body weight range, it was very mentally draining because I was constantly like, I can't eat that because I'll go over. And I could see my relationship with food kind of struggling because I was so nervous that if I ate another gram of fat or another gram of carbs, I was just going to add 5 pounds.
Yeah.
Not true.
When you mention about sort of the eating better when it comes to weightlifting as opposed to CrossFit, do you think sometimes that's where because you know the community side of things and the fun side of things and the variety in CrossFit, I can see why that's really, really appealing to people, because you know once you sort of go to those gyms, that you become attached to that CrossFit gym and you become part become a part of that community. But in terms of you know the nutrition side of things, or if picking up niggles, injuries, and potentially the professionalism side of things, do you think that you know people can go a lot further when it comes to weightlifting, as opposed to there's a bigger pool of people that are maybe limited as to how far they can actually get in CrossFit?
Sure. Yeah, I think right. Yeah, whatever it's going to be called. It's so controversial right now. I feel terrible for everybody in the sport. But you know, with CrossFit, you kind of have to be, I'm going to say this without saying this in the wrong way. You kind of have to be gifted, because in some area you have to like, if you want to train for CrossFit now, you have to put so much effort and time into, you have to pour everything into it. So you have to quit your job and you have to just pour yourself into CrossFit. Same as weightlifting. If you want to be a good weightlifter now, the sport has advanced so far, both sports, that it's like, now you have to like be a full-time athlete if you want to make like international teams or Olympic teams, or you want to do really well at regionals to make the CrossFit Games. With CrossFit, I think it's a lot more injury prone. You're moving in all different planes, in all different directions as quickly as possible. You're not paying attention to your form. You're not paying attention to, oh shoot, this is going to hurt because I have to touch and go a snatch, and touch and going snatches aren't supposed to be a thing until CrossFit came around and made it a thing. So when I first started weightlifting, I actually started touching going reps, and Max was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, what? He's like, there's no touch and going in the sport. And I was like, okay. So anybody that doesn't know touch and go means it's like touch the bar on the ground and then you lift it immediately of your head without just dropping it, resting for a second, and then repicking the bar up. So weightlifting is a lot less injury prone, I would say, because you are a lot more controlled, and I think the only thing that weightlifting you're working in one plane, right? You're working in a frontal plane the entire time you do weightlifting. So you really have to pay attention to how many accessory movements are you doing outside of like this frontal plane, like moving in this direction the whole entire time. We're squatting here in the frontal plane, we're snatching, we're cleaning, we're jerking, everything, pulling. So as a weightlifter, you have to make sure you're getting different directions like sagittal, transverse, and then you have to make sure you're balancing any imbalances out. So that way, if your one side of your glutes firing, you need to make sure your other glutes firing, so that way you're not getting any imbalances, because it can lead to a ton of problems. Whereas CrossFit, you're working all these different planes, so your body's, I would say, it's more balanced, because now that I incorporated CrossFit, now I feel like my right side is finally functioning properly, and my left side is like, my left and right side are balanced, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say weightlifting is way less injury prone and CrossFit is way more injury prone because of the craziness of it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's an interesting topic, because I know, it's funny that you mentioned there about the touch and go, and it's like there's deadlifts in there, and I always say to the clients that I'm working with when we're deadlifting, it's like, no, you keep the plates on the floor, set yourself, and then we can go again. It's an interesting way to look at it in terms of the changing in pace, and from a programming point of view, there is a lot more variety in CrossFit, and I think that's why sometimes people are a little bit because there is that question of, right, if I'm going to try and do weightlifting or get involved in something, people think that actually, I'm going to get injured. But I think if we, like with anything, as long as you're showing how to do it properly, then you're not gonna get injured. But then again, like you say, with the more variety that there is, yes, you might be balanced, but because you're doing so much, there is always that risk that actually you could injure yourself.
Sure.
The next thing I kind of wanted to touch on was, obviously you've mentioned there about working with Juggernaut training systems, obviously working with nutrition as well, and cutting. How have you found the support network around you with the different coaches that you're working with has actually benefited your performance? And do you think having that network around you has actually been really beneficial to have different people in different areas that you can pick their brains?
Yeah, I couldn't thank my sponsors and people that have been on my team since I started this athletic journey, since I was 9 years old. I've always been very blessed with having people be like, come on in, we'll just take you in and you don't have to pay. And as an athlete, you just don't make money. As like a weightlifter, I mean, it's hard to make money because it's like the top 10 girls, 12 girls get paid for weightlifting. And at the end of the day, you get maybe like right now I'm getting $1,000, not taxed. So once that's taxed, it's like $700 a month. That's not a lot of money. I mean, you do this out of the love of your heart for out of the love because you love it. I don't expect much from it, but the people that are there by my side from the beginning allow me to make this journey possible. So Chad has been the first sponsor that entered my life. Chad Wesley Smith, owner of Juggernaut Training System. He picked me up as a CrossFit athlete, believed in me. And then that's the year I almost made to the CrossFit Games. So he's like, dude, perfect. And then after Chad came on other sponsors that I don't currently work with right now, but I do still thank them for giving me the opportunity and the chance. I didn't really know how to work with sponsors too back then. I kind of just, it's hard as an elite athlete. You're not an Instagram model and you're not an Instagram influencer. You're an athlete. So at the end of the day, what's going to be posted about is my training. It's not going to be all these cute pictures because half the time I don't feel like getting ready in the morning to look cute. So it's very rare I look like this. And it's like one of those things, right? It's like what comes first is my training. So if a sponsor is willing to work with me because I am able to agree upon, like, my training comes first and that's where I put my energy. I'm not going to be able to promote your product every 5 seconds. If you want pictures, you're going to have to come and take pictures of me and make those pictures happen. So that all kind of was like the first relationship with sponsors. And it was rocky because the only sponsor that was really willing to work with me 100% was Chad. Like, I never did anything for Chad for the first, like, let's see, I've been with him 6 years now, 7 this year. So it'd be actually, I think it's 7 years now. So I think I joined his team right before regionals and it's June. So I think I've been with him for 7 years. And so Chad, he never needed anything from me. Like, you don't need to continuously post like 4 posts a month and have things like written on them. He just was there for me. He understood the athlete journey because he was an athlete once. So that's really important. And then I now work with like X Endurance and they give me free supplements, which is absolutely incredible. And I have opportunity for commission there. And RP Strength, they work with me as an athlete. I have to make a few posts a month for them, which I've been doing that with them for 4 years this September. I work with, this is probably one of my, another one of my favorite ones is, when I work with RP, I actually have my own dietitian and her name's Megan, and she works with me to make my template. She adjusts it every time I go through an adjustment phase. Like, when I stopped doing the 49 kilo weight class, like, I don't know if I'm 100% done with it, like I said, but when I stopped it in February after Malta, she made my template be for a 55 kilo weightlifter. So now I'm following like a 55 kilo template. So I think I sit around like 54. I'm not like a true 55 yet. So we work together often. She's also adjusted my template for my Hashimoto's. That's been incredible. USAW has been really awesome, and I've been fortunate working with them on the side of, they help me get they give free blood tests. So I've been really fortunate with that aspect. They've also give out stipends, and I don't think CrossFit does this to their athletes, but we get paid stipends monthly if you're a top 12 athlete in international level. So it's very hard to get. Who else do I work with? Oh, my PT, physical therapist, has been probably the best one because, well, not the best one, but a very huge help because he has kept my body able to do this journey. Because without him, his name's Sam and he's from PT Link in Maumee, Ohio, but he does soft tissue work. We do needling, we do cupping, we do e-stem, we do ultrasound, we do the scraping tool.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm talking, that scraping tool, I forget what it's called. And then we just do a lot of my corrective exercises to keep my body balanced, to keep my glutes firing and my shoulders in shape and my core working in different planes. He's taught me all of that work. And just working with him has been amazing. But oh my God, I'm forgetting the most important person. Max, what the heck? I think Max is just like my given. So I think of him as like Max and me are like one coach athlete because we've been working so side by side and he's been there my entire journey. That man has put so much energy into this process like I have, that we are both totally and completely drained from it. And the fact that he believed in me that much as an athlete every step of the way, no matter what, was exactly the coach I could have, ever asked for, because he put everything into me as a coach, and he was constantly there for me. We made changes. We had great communication. And we learned a lot from each other. We learned like what an athlete needs from a coach and what a coach needs from an athlete, and how hard an athlete works for a coach and how hard a coach works for an athlete. So without Max, none of this process would have been possible. He has adjusted my programming every single week for me to perform at my best. He's also been there at every single competition. He's been there every single weight cut. He will set up the sauna. He will take it down. He will get up early to help me figure out what I need to eat. He will keep me laughing, which is the most important thing when you're going through a very brutal weight cut. He will keep me laughing and joking throughout the process, because without him, I would never have made it this far. So
it's from everything that you've said there, and why I like asking that question, especially speaking to athletes with at the level that you're at, that there is that support network around you, and I know you're the person that's going out onto the platform.
Yeah.
But, there is your team behind you to get that finished product on the platform, if you like. And what I really like that you mentioned there is, I think sometimes people from the outside looking in see athletes, advertising this or advertising that or posting anything, whereas actually the whole reason why speaking for myself, why I follow these athletes is because you want to see them train, and you want to see them progress, and when it comes around to coming onto the platform and they've hit something in training, then all of a sudden they absolutely smoke something in a competition. That's what you want to be looking at. And I think coming full circle to at the start when we chatted about goals, that the goals aren't there to get sponsors. The goals aren't there to, oh yeah, come and have a look at this. The goal there is, sponsorships, will come if you get to a certain level. But, it's there, like what you mentioned about, working with Max as your coach, working with your physical therapist, and having that support network there to help you. I think you said there that, if you set at the start of the podcast, you mentioned if you set those goals, and if you get to that point and you maybe don't achieve it, well, at least you did everything that you could to get there, and then you can sit and reassess and have a look what the next goal is. So quite a lot.
I do actually have one more thing to say. I totally forgot about my boyfriend, which is another given, like Max. She's gonna be like, thanks, Alyssa. But Ben has literally another one, like with Max. I would say Ben has been the hardest one, because he sees me at home when no one else sees me, because Instagram is a very highlighted highlight reel when we post, and I try not to make it like that. I try to let people see my ups and downs, because I want to be real for them, and I want to show them this isn't all bread and butter all the time. But my boyfriend Ben has dealt with me at my worst, when I cry and when I get angry, and then I lash out at him for nothing he did, but for me being hungry or me being tired or exhausted. He has watched me put in hours and hours and hours into training, and hours in this house, just sitting on my couch and doing nothing just to recover from my training session. And we have missed out on friendships and parties, and we have missed out on adventures, and we have missed out on just living life with a lot more balance because of me. He had dealt with me before I was on my medication for my thyroid medication. I think I was very kind of depressed. I don't like to say it, but I think I was. People looking at me would have been like, no, Alyssa, you were very happy. I mean, you saw me, like, I wasn't putting on a face, but I was definitely trying to be happier in public for people, because I didn't want people to see me vulnerable or upset. And my boyfriend saw all that. So honestly, if anybody's the hero in the situation, it's him, because he's the one who dealt with it's not easy. And actually on my podcast, we have an episode talking about that. It's not easy living with an elite athlete. It's not. And like, he has also eaten the same foods that I have eaten. So that way I don't have to see him eating like a tub of ice cream, or, you know what I mean? Like, that matters. That little stuff matters. The fact that he was the one that was always like, hey, you need to make sure that you're stretching, or you need to make sure you're not eating that, or you need to make sure you're not over dousing the vegetables in olive oil. Like, that stupid little crap matters. And for him to point that out was huge for me. So he, the sponsors and the people in your life and your team that back you up through the process are the real heroes. They're the people that, like, the fact that like people believed in me that much to stand by my side, that's huge.
And you mentioned it earlier on in the podcast, that those small little wins, those small little things,
Yes.
and to have somebody there, to when, behind the scenes where you're not posting your lifting, or like what you said, in the comfort of your own home, that is where it matters. And I'll say to, when clients speak to me and say that they're struggling with nutrition or struggling with this, I think, the relationships that you have, whether it's friends, family, loved ones, boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, all that sort of stuff, get them involved, because it does make that that much of a difference, having someone there to support you. Quite a lot of things sort of covered in that podcast. I really enjoyed everything that we chatted about. But the final question, if you like, is for everyone listening, and after everything that we've spoken about, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
Yeah, good question. Good question. Just know that you're not limited to anything in life. And if you don't like what you're doing, there's always a way out. You can always do something different. And just always remember that if you're not excited to begin your day when you wake up, you're doing it wrong, because you should be excited. Things should make you happy and smile when you start your day. You shouldn't want to like hit your alarm clock 3 times because you're like, I don't want to get up because I don't want to go to work. You should not even have to set an alarm, and your body should just get up because you're excited to start your day. So, man, this life is so short, and we don't have much time on this earth. And if I could give you any piece of advice, like I just said, what I said, also have fun, live life to its fullest, and just do what you want to freaking do.
Awesome. Some good words of wisdom on there. Thanks a lot, Alyssa, for taking the time to chat with me. Really, really enjoyed chatting with you. If anyone has any questions about anything that we've chatted about today, or want to see your the content that you put out there, where can people find you? Or listen, because it's is it Bitty Strong, the podcast?
Yes, so it's the Bitty Strong podcast. It's on iTunes and Spotify. People can also find me on Instagram. It's Alyssa Ritchey 1. You can also look at my website. It's www.alyssaritchey.com. I do adventure retreats. So it's actually, I'm going to take a group to Thailand this February 2021.
Oh, cool.
It ended up getting postponed because COVID, which makes me so bad. But so if you want to go weightlift, I'm going to teach a full weightlifting course in the morning every day, except I think 2 days we have off. So it'll be like a Sunday to Sunday retreat every morning, except Sunday, Thursday, and Saturday. We'll have a weightlifting 2.5 hour seminar with me, one-on-one. And not one-on-one, but like 1-on-10, because there's 10 people allowed to go. And then after the weightlifting stuff, we go shower, and then we will go do our first, we'll go hike in the the jungle. We'll go feed the elephants. We'll go whitewater rafting, just a food tour, a ton of cool things. So if you want to check that out, they could actually just email me personally. It's alyssaricchey15@gmail.com.
Awesome. I might have to look at that. I've never been to Thailand, so that'll be a selling point.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for taking the time to
Yeah.
chat with me. I really, really appreciated it. 100% for everyone listening. Check out the content that, and have a look at Thailand, and see what Alyssa's getting up to. Thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me again. Thanks to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
Thank you.